This video is brought to you by Factor.
Prepare yourself, Yugi, for you are about to face the wrath of the greatest duelist who has ever lived. Bring it on, Kaiba. Let's duel! For my first brilliant move, I summon my—
Hold up. Sorry guys, gotta hit the pause button here. Hi, yes, I'm a representative from the censorship department at 4Kids, and it is my duty to make sure that nothing gets past the censors that might upset or endanger the viewers in our audience. So, yeah, the previous scene with the Sharpie on your hands, we're gonna cover that up. Don't want the kids playing with markers that could potentially cause irritation to their skin. All right, perfect. Continue, fellas. No more from me. Have fun with your Pokemon cards.
What's a Pokemon? Behold, Yugi, my most powerful card. I summon my Blue Eyes White Dragon. With this card, you don't stand a chance.
Hold up.
Oh my god, what is it now?
Just a small thing, I promise. So, I just spoke to corporate and yeah, those cards of yours, those edges are a bit sharp and might lead to some nasty paper cuts, so yeah, we're gonna have to censor the cards.
So our show about dueling with monster cards won't feature any cards?
Yes. 4Kids Entertainment, a name that strikes both sentimental memory and fear into the hearts of aging weeaboo millennials. For many American kids back in the 2000s, 4Kids was their first introduction to anime, with shows like Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh!, and One Piece. 4Kids would acquire, license, and dub these Japanese shows into English, and by doing so, unlocked an explosive demographic that could not get enough. Hell, I was there, Gandalf. I was there when this happened. I was a dumb little kid at the time, sprinting home off the bus so I could catch the next episode of Pokemon. Would Butterfree leave Ash? I had to know. I was obsessed, and so was virtually every other kid around me, though there were some side effects to the success of 4Kids localization. For example, I'm not proud to say that when my father took me to a sushi place as a kid, I asked the chef there for a jelly donut while pointing at a rice ball.
These donuts are great. Jelly-filled are my favorite. Nothing beats a jelly-filled donut.
There's no denying that 4Kids was instrumental to the rise in popularity of anime in America. It was so successful that the company itself was even listed on the New York Stock Exchange. Hell, what's more American than that? Well, I guess the 4Kids national anthem might.
For the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming.
And the rocket's red glare.
But today, 4Kids is a defunct company and a distant memory. In 2017, the company closed its doors, and they have remained shut ever since. So, what happened? How did this powerhouse of a company that essentially had a monopoly over network anime licensing go under? Was it due to 4Kids needlessly censoring Japanese shows for American audiences? Was it due to poor leadership at 4Kids? Or perhaps something else? I mean, what banished 4Kids to the Shadow Realm? Well, let's find out. Now, before we discuss what ruined 4Kids, we need to talk about what made it so special in the first place. The events and decisions that led to its meteoric rise and then fall. Well, it starts all the way back in 1970 with a company that was the predecessor of 4Kids, Leisure Concept Inc., or LCI. It was created by Mike Germankane and Stan Weston, and was based out of New York City. Originally, LCI had nothing to do with localizing anime, and instead focused on licensing existing properties and pitching original children's show concepts along with toy lines with said shows. Weston was the creator of G.I. Joe, so this market was familiar territory for him. The company would secure a handful of high-profile licenses throughout the 80s, from Nintendo properties like The Legend of Zelda to superheroes such as The Incredible Hulk, and film franchises like James Bond. But one of LCI's biggest wins was brought to Weston's attention by a colleague named Ted Wolfe, a concept for a fantasy show starring cat-like superheroes. Using his industry connections, he was able to pitch the show concept to Rankin Bass, which LCI had a good relationship with. They saw potential in the show pitch and signed a deal with LCI to develop the new cartoon, Thundercats. Rankin Bass and its parent company, Lorimar Telepictures Corp., would handle production of the actual cartoon itself, while LCI handled the concepts for the show. Joe McCain in particular would design almost all of the characters and location concepts for Thundercats, before handing the designs off to Rankin Bass, who ultimately farmed out the animation to Japanese studio Pacific Animation Corporation to take the designs and make a cartoon with them. Thundercats was a massive hit, running for 4 seasons and becoming a staple of 1980s pop culture. In the early 90s, LCI shifted gears and began licensing animation from overseas to dub it for a Western audience through a new subsidiary called 4Kids Productions. Also, in 1990, LCI got a new CEO, a person whose name sends a chill down the spine of gamers everywhere, Bobby Kotick. He purchased a controlling stake in the company's shares and would keep the title for a year, until selling his share of the company to move on and become CEO of Activision, where he remains to this very day. Alfred Kahn would replace Kotick as CEO, and in 1995, the company would rebrand from LCI to 4Kids Entertainment, Inc. By 2000, 4Kids was doing incredibly well. Due to the explosive success of an anime property, the company decided to localize. A little show you might have heard of, I don't know. It's called Pokemon. I know that basically everyone and their mother knows about Pokemon, but it was truly next level back in the late 90s and early 2000s. The frenzy took the world by storm, and it propelled 4Kids to massive profits. So much so that 4Kids was big enough to IPO and was listed on the New York Stock Exchange in 2000, becoming one of the top 100 fastest growing companies of that year. By 2002, Pokemon alone had generated $140 million in revenue for the company. And in 2001, they acquired a 3% stake in the Pokemon company itself, so they could benefit from the massive merchandising arm of the brand. They would also continue doubling down on the anime dubbing formula, adapting popular Shonen Jump titles such as One Piece and Shaman King. But their second largest success was, without a doubt, Yu-Gi-Oh!, securing both the localization and merchandising rights to it in the entire West. While not as all-encompassing as Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh! Again was a massive hit for the company, running alongside Pokemon on Kids WB from 2001 to 2006. Just like Pokemon, I too was obsessed with Yu-Gi-Oh! And bought all of the trading cards. Hell, it was the first card game I ever played, and I wasted all the money I had on it. Just all of it was gone. But hey, at least I was a good player.
Activate 3 blasting the ruin.
That wasn't all for the company though. At the time, the biggest rival to Kids WB cartoon block was arguably Fox Kids, which would often try and match WB's programming with similar shows of its own. Pokemon on Kids WB was countered with Digimon on Fox, Max Steel on Kids WB, Action Man on Fox Kids, Batman Beyond on Kids WB, Spider-Man Unlimited on Fox Kids. The two blocks traded blows throughout the late 90s and early 2000s. But eventually, Fox Kids as a block folded, as it was gobbled up by Disney, and in its place came Foxbox, a new kids block run entirely by 4Kids, that launched in September of 2002 via a 4-year, $100 million deal with Fox, earning 4Kids all the advertising revenue earned during the block. The block itself would eventually be rebranded to 4Kids TV in 2005. A few years later, in 2008, Warner Brothers ended their Kids WB block, and 4Kids picked up all of the slots on their network. Combined with their block on Fox, they now had 9 hours of programming across 2 networks that historically had traded blows with one another. 4Kids now essentially had a monopoly on their little niche of dumbed-down Japanese imports, and ruled its portion of American television with an iron censored fist. At this point in 4Kids history, they are at the top of their game and feasting like kings. But they would be eating better if they had Factor. Look, a jelly donut. Sure, Brock, whatever you say. So, part of my goals this year is to eat at home more often. and try to avoid those expensive takeout options. But that can be challenging with my schedule. I want lunch right now. But I don't want to have to spend time prepping it, making it. It's too time-consuming. But that's where Factor comes to the rescue. I run downstairs on all fours for some reason. I turn on the oven, I toss in my meal in like 7 to 10 minutes. A quick and tasty lunch that is also keto-friendly. Yeah, it puts the pro and protein. Boom. I'm just being super cringy today, aren't I? My latest meal from Factor was the jalapeno popper burger, and it was wonderful. I ate that in like a few minutes. It was gone like that. I snapped my fingers. We couldn't hear that. Yes, editor, put that in the video. Factor also sent me some wonderful smoothies. My friends love them. Again, I'm trying to keto, so they look tasty. I've had them before on my off keto days, but like I'm trying to keep with it, and they're just tempting me in the fridge. Look at them, sons of guns. Another thing I really appreciate is how Factor is fresh and never frozen. I mean, hey, you can put them in the freezer if you want, but I say put them in the fridge and have them on standby. Super easy meals that are easy to access and locked and loaded for my busy work week. Oh, and they're also easy for logging my calories and hitting my daily macros. So head to factor75.com or click the link down below and use code Saberspark60 to get 60% off your first Factor box. Do it now before Brock forces a quote-unquote jelly donut down your throat. Ew, it's all ricey. No, seriously, what was that about? Come on, 4Kids. I think we know what a rice ball is.
It's a giant sandwich.
What the hell is even that?
Around the same time, when 4Kids was continuing its glorious march of global jelly donut domination, cracks in the armor were starting to form, and the company made a lot of poor decisions that began to sow the seeds of their downfall. The first and arguably biggest mistake they made was 4Kids selling its 3% stake in the Pokemon Company in October of 2005. For what seems like a paltry $960,000, or at least when you compare that number to the well over $100 million they made off the property. 2 months later in December, they chose not to renew their licensing agreement to dub the show, and the Pokemon Company would start handling the international distribution of the anime internally starting in 2006. It seems like a staggeringly stupid decision to let go of an IP as powerful as Pokemon. But we have the benefit of hindsight here. For perspective, Pokemon Fever, which was something truly unrivaled by any other media presence ever experienced.
Hurry, it's spreading!
Squirtle, Squirtle.
Bulbasaur!
Pikachu! This is the 20th case of Pokemon Fever this week.
It's unstoppable!
Was cooling off in the mid-2000s. So perhaps the 4Kids execs assumed that this fad was dying down. And between the rise of Yu-Gi-Oh! And their new block on Fox, they thought that they were already in a good position moving forward, not realizing at the time that Pokemon is a franchise seemingly unable to die. Like seriously, this IP will outlast the heat death of the universe. Other business decisions would eventually impact the company. For example, 4Kids would try to move beyond children's media with a new subsidiary called Foresight Licensing Solutions, which was aimed at a teen and adult market. They also launched a trading card company called TC Digital Games LLC, and an online multi-platform video game company called TC Websites in December of 2006. They were billed as a massive expansion to the company's business model. In 2010, both were shut down and were sound failures. Only a year after clinching both Fox and WB's children's block, Foxbox would shut down in 2008. And later that year, 4Kids would lay off 15% of its workforce due to the struggling economic conditions of 2008. I mean, it was kind of bad timing for them to have these issues during that era, considering that 2008 was like the midst of a financial meltdown across the world and probably hastened to the fall of 4Kids as a company. Other issues, such as pausing of common stock trading and a shuffling of CEOs, would only continue to batter the company. But it was in 2011 where things got really ugly for 4Kids. While Yu-Gi-Oh! Was their most profitable license after losing Pokemon, unfortunately, they just weren't making that much money from airing the anime alone. They had to make other deals with Funimation, another anime localization company, to create home videos of Yu-Gi-Oh! And Majesco, a game studio, that made versions of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime playable on the Game Boy Advance. Well, let's just say the IP owners of Yu-Gi-Oh! TV Tokyo and Nihon Ad Systems, both decided that 4Kids was way out of line for making their own deals for the franchise, citing that 4Kids owed them a portion of the royalties from those agreements using the franchise, and that also, by making the deals without their permission, that these companies get to keep all of the royalties for themselves, and that 4Kids had broken the terms of the licensing contract that they had with Yu-Gi-Oh's Japanese overlords. All in all, it looked pretty bad for 4Kids. And you know what these Japanese companies did? They sued 4Kids. They sued them in 2011 for $5 million in damages for underpayments, wrongful deductions, and unmet obligations. As a result of the lawsuit, 4Kids' license to Yu-Gi-Oh! Was revoked by TV Tokyo, and 4Kids filed for bankruptcy. At the time, it seemed like that was the end for 4Kids as a company. Or was it?
I activate the magic card, Monster Reborn!
Apparently, the Japanese companies pulling the license as quickly as they did also violated the terms of the contract on TV Tokyo's end, and more legal shenanigans occurred as 4Kids fought back to keep their hands on the golden goose, and they countersued. Eventually, the court actually sided with 4Kids, saying that using outside companies to distribute home videos was a normal practice, and not a violation of the initial license 4Kids made with TV Tokyo. 4Kids actually came out ahead in the lawsuit, being awarded $8 million at the end of the day. The company's fortunes seemed to be swinging back in their favor, going from staring down bankruptcy to a massive cash infusion. But unfortunately for 4Kids, the good times would not last. 4Kids eventually sold off its licenses to other companies in 2012 and shut down most of its other businesses due to a lack of profitability. The company rebranded that same year to 4 Licensing Corporation, but barely made any waves. And in 2016, 4Kids filed for bankruptcy and immediately ceased operations once it was finalized the next year. And so, the once entertainment giant that had brought both Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh! To the States, that opened the hearts and minds of millions of American kids to the world of anime, died with a whimper, and barely anyone noticed or cared. Of course, that lack of notice or care was primarily because culturally, the landscape for anime and manga was changing rapidly by the mid-2000s through the early 2010s. Also, 4Kids had to deal with the rise of the internet, democratizing access to anime and manga via illegal piracy, and showing 90s kids who grew up on censored shows, dumbed down to be in line with the tone of American cartoons, that anime itself actually had a bit more of a bite to it.
Was that the bite of 87?
Even legally, the Western publication of Shonen Jump in the mid-2000s, the premier source for shonen manga in Japan and the source of the vast majority of shows that 4Kids adapted, published the content mostly uncensored. So you could easily pick up an issue of Shonen Jump and see how series like One Piece, Yu-Gi-Oh! And Shaman King were supposed to be experienced, instead of the downgraded anime adaptation airing on the weekends or after school. Considering fan subs began to proliferate via file-sharing services at the same time that were entirely free and available on demand, and were preserved exactly as intended, you had a hobby that was now easily accessible, that provided an objectively superior experience at zero cost. The kids who grew up on 4Kids were getting older, and this new avenue for experiencing anime meant that the medium could grow up with them. As the internet continued to expand and become more easily accessible, the market for primetime corporate adaptations continued to dwindle and die. A final death rattle for 4Kids as it fell into its censored grave. In conclusion, it was poor corporate leadership and bad business decisions that led to the downfall of 4Kids. Selling Pokemon, rocking the boat with the owners of Yu-Gi-Oh!, expanding operations on pointless ventures, and all of this during one of the worst financial crises in world history. On top of that, the internet was eroding away at television and was becoming a much more ideal place for anime fans to get their shows unaltered. Now, It is easy to throw 4Kids under the bus and ridicule it for its butchering of anime series, whether it was dumbing it down for younger audiences or censoring said content and replacing Japanese concepts in order to make the material more palatable to American sensibilities. Like, I can understand 4Kids censoring beer and cigarettes, but changing guns to fingers? Oh, come on. That looks a bit silly and kind of ruins the tension of the scene. Though it needs to be said that part of the censorship thing with 4Kids might have just been the company following orders from the television networks. That they, the networks, give orders to the production companies, such as 4Kids, when it comes to changing certain things for the network's audience. Eric Stewart, the voice of Brock in the 4Kids dub of Pokemon, and Kaiba for its Yu-Gi-Oh dub, is on record saying that a sweeping amount of networks and companies involved in the import of anime from Japan were in favor of Americanization, such as changing rice balls to jelly donuts, which was the case for the dubs even outside of America. Even the Japanese companies wanted this because they thought it would give their shows more worldwide appeal.
So we wanted to make Pokemon a universal show for whatever country you were in. And more people could relate to donuts than sushi worldwide. So that's what we did. We didn't change the animation, but we changed that. That was so that it would then be distributed all over. So in Germany, things like that, they referenced it as a donut and not a Japanese food product.
Regardless of who was guilty for making the changes, looking back on the business model of 4Kids now, the average anime fan who did not grow up with the company's shows on TV are probably horrified, since nowadays even some slight localization and subtitles is met with heavy backlash from the hardcore anime faithful. But at the time of 4Kids, this was just par for the course for adapting Japanese entertainment. 4Kids was hardly the first company, and anime was far from the first export from Japan to suffer this fate. Only a few years before, Saban Entertainment would basically do the exact same thing with tokusatsu series such as Super Sentai, Kamen Rider, Metal Hero, and B-Fighter, localizing them to Power Rangers, Mask Ride, VR Troopers, and Beetleborgs respectively. These shows would use the fight scenes from those shows while replacing the entire story sections with new footage shot with American actors, while also reducing the language and violence, and generally writing for a younger crowd. Tokusatsu is already aimed at a younger demographic than most anime, so the changes Saban had to make were not as severe, and tokusatsu in general isn't nearly as popular in the West as anime. Thus, these adaptations were far less controversial. The 70s and 80s similarly localized and adapted anime, with series such as Star Blazers and Robotech getting heavily edited from their source materials, Space Battleship Yamato and Macross, to the point where they were basically entire new shows merely using the same art assets. Even 4Kids contemporaries at the time, like Toonami, still heavily edited the content they aired. Gundam Wing was censored to remove graphic violence and language, only airing uncut during the block's late-night program, The Midnight Run. Dragon Ball was similarly censored, removing blood and language, adding lots of jokes to soften the story, and even as going as far as changing Hell to HFIL, or as it's called, Home for Infinite Losers. Outlaw Star had an entire episode removed, where the crew went to a hot spring because it had too much nudity to censor. And somehow Tenchi Muo, a harem series, was cut down to be an action series, with romance only as a subplot. The point I'm trying to make, for as much flack as 4Kids gets nowadays, which they arguably deserve, up until the internet really took off and fan subs were able to be easily distributed, this was how most anime was consumed in America. Outside of niche publishers releasing limited runs on VHS. Despite airing on TV in a censored format as Yu Yu Hakusho, you could go to your local Blockbuster and find OVAs for rent of the same property uncensored, instead titled as Poltergeist Files. And there's also lots of other series that got direct-to-video releases from early anime heavyweights like ADV Films and Manga Entertainment. But even releases from said companies were almost always dubbed. Getting your hands on properly subtitled anime outside of bootleg fan subs distributed at conventions was almost non-existent before file sharing showed the public what they were missing. All in all, 4Kids made some dumb, boneheaded decisions that are laughable to anime fans nowadays. but it can legit be argued that anime would not be where it is today if it wasn't for 4Kids being the first to distribute shows to audiences across the world. Were they weird and butchered content and sometimes downright stupid? Oh, absolutely. But said shows lit a fire in these viewers to want more, and 4Kids Corpse paved the way for future fans of anime. Wait, corpse? Oh, no, we have to censor that. Yeah, let's just make it
Jelly-filled donut.
Perfect.